Hello, and a huge welcome to the channel. If you're looking for cross-dressing stories that are emotional, intriguing, and truly empowering, you've come to the right place. If you put that dress on today, I don't think you're ever going to want to take it off. I didn't say it out loud, not then, but the thought was screaming in my head, loud enough to drown out the hum of the air conditioner. It was one of those Oregon summer afternoons that feels heavy, like a wet wool blanket draped over the entire neighborhood. The air outside was thick with the smell of cut grass and melting asphalt, but inside the living room, it smelled like cheap beer and Rachel's vanilla vape juice. I was sprawled out on the rug, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above us. Whir, click, whir, click. It was hypnotic. "I'm just saying," Rachel said, her voice cutting through the haze. She was dangling a pair of oversized sunglasses from her toes, lying upside down on the sofa. "Michael has the eyelashes for it. It's unfair. Actually, look at them. They're like spider legs." I shifted my gaze to my brother, Michael. He was sitting in the armchair, the one Dad usually claimed, but Michael looked small in it. He was 22, freshly back from college, but he looked shrunk. He was hunched over a bottle of Coors Light, peeling the label off in long, satisfying strips. Scritch. Scritch. "Leave him alone. Rach," I said, but I didn't mean it. I was bored. We were all bored. And when you're bored in the suburbs, you start poking things just to see if they move. "No, seriously," Olivia chimed in. She was cross-legged on the floor next to me, braiding the tassels of the rug. "We have that party at the lake house tonight. Theme is anything goes. Why not? It would be hilarious." Michael looked up. His eyes were wide. Deer in headlights wide. He gave a nervous, tight-lipped smile. "I don't think I'd make a very pretty girl," he said. His voice cracked a little. "Just a fracture." "Bullshit," Rachel said. She sat up, the sunglasses falling from her foot. "You have Emily's bone structure. Actually, you have better cheekbones than Emily. No offense, Em." "None taken." I lied. I looked at Michael again, really looked at him. He was wearing baggy cargo shorts and a grey t-shirt that was 2 sizes too big. He always dressed like that, like he was trying to hide inside his clothes, like he was smuggling something and didn't want the TSA to notice. "I bet you couldn't do it," Rachel said. Her voice dropped an octave. The playfulness evaporated, replaced by something sharper. A challenge. "I bet you couldn't handle being a girl for one night. The heels. The Spanx. The way guys look at you. You'd crumble." The room went quiet. The only sound was the condensation dripping from Michael's beer bottle onto his knee. Drip. Michael didn't laugh it off. He didn't roll his eyes. He swallowed. I saw his Adam's apple bob up and down. "How much?" Michael asked. My stomach dropped. Oh God, he's actually considering it. $50, Olivia said, giggling. "No money," Rachel said, locking eyes with him. "If you do it, and you actually pass like. If someone buys you a drink, I cover your tab for the rest of the summer." Michael looked at me. His eyes were searching for something. Permission. Or maybe he was checking to see if I was laughing at him. I wasn't laughing. I felt this weird vibration in my chest. I knew, deep down in my gut, that this wasn't about the free drinks. "Do it," I whispered. Michael stood up. He set the beer on the coaster with a heavy clunk. "Okay," he said, "let's go." My bedroom was the lab. It was a chaotic explosion of fabrics, makeup palettes, and shoes kicked into corners. I locked the door. Click. That sound was important. It sealed the world out. In here. Dad's expectations didn't exist. In here. Michael wasn't the son who was supposed to go to law school. "Okay," I said, turning to face him. "Strip." Michael froze. He stood by the window, the sunlight illuminating the dust motes dancing around him. He crossed his arms over his chest. Right now, he asked. We can't put foundation on that stubble, Mike, and you can't wear cargo shorts under a skirt, unless you're going for the confused tourist look. He nodded stiffly. I turned around to dig through my closet, giving him a moment of privacy. I could hear the sounds behind me. The heavy thud of his sneakers hitting the floor, the zip of his shorts, the rustle of cotton. I felt like an intruder in my own room. Why was my heart pounding? It was just my brother. We used to take baths together when we were toddlers. But this felt different. This felt clandestine. Okay, he said. His voice was barely a whisper. I turned back. He was standing in his boxers. He was thin, wiry, but his skin was pale and smooth. He was hugging himself, shoulders hunched up to his ears. He looked terrified. Stop slouching, I said, trying to sound like a drill sergeant to cover my own nervousness. Shoulders back, boobs out, even if you don't have them yet. I dragged my desk chair to the center of the room. Sit. He sat. The wood creaked under him. Close your eyes, I commanded. I grabbed a bottle of moisturizer, cold, creamy lotion. I rubbed it between my hands to warm it up, then reached out and touched his face. He flinched. Relax, I murmured, it's just lotion. I began to massage it into his skin. His jaw was clenched so tight I could feel the muscle jumping under my fingertips. His skin was rougher than mine. The shadow of stubble scratching against my palms. But as I worked the lotion in, circling his cheeks, his forehead, his neck, I felt him exhale. A long, shuddering breath. His shoulders dropped an inch. Feels good, I asked. It smells like peaches, he whispered. Apricot, I corrected. I moved to the foundation. This was the architecture. I had to hide the Michael to find the person underneath. I dabbed the sponge against his skin. Pat, pat, pat. I watched him closely. His eyes were squeezed shut, like he was afraid that if he opened them, the spell would break. Stop wrinkling your forehead, I said softly. You're making it cakey. He smoothed his face. I worked in silence for 20 minutes. Concealer under the eyes to hide the fatigue, a little contour to soften the jawline, mascara. God. Rachel was right. As I swept the wand through his lashes, they fluttered against my thumb. Long, dark, thick lashes. Open, I said. He opened his eyes. The mascara made the blue of his irises pop. They looked electric. He blinked, the lashes feeling heavy, unfamiliar. Weird, I asked. Heavy, he said. He touched his cheek. Careful not to smudge. I feel hidden, in a good way. Stand up, let's deal with the body. This was the tricky part, the clothes. I had pulled out a dress I hadn't worn in a year. It was a navy blue A-line dress with small white daisies on it. It had a cinched waist and a flared skirt. Safe, classic, feminine but not aggressive. But first, the basics. I tossed a pair of sheer black pantyhose at him. Put these on. Be careful. If you rip them with your toenails, I kill you. Watching a man try to put on pantyhose for the first time is usually comedy gold. It's a wrestling match. But watching Michael, it wasn't funny. It was intense. He sat on the edge of the bed. He bunched the nylon up in his hands, trembling. He looked at the material like it was made of glass. He slid his foot in. He pulled the fabric up his calf. He paused. I saw his hand run up the side of his leg, feeling the sensation of the nylon compressing his skin, smooth on smooth. It feels... He started, then stopped. Tight, I offered. Safe, he said. It feels like it's holding me together. He stood up to pull them the rest of the way up. The struggle over the hips, the snap of the waistband. He looked down at his legs. They didn't look like his legs anymore. They looked sleek, shapely. Dress time, I said, holding it out. He stepped into it. I pulled it up. Arms up, I ordered. He raised his arms. Surrendering. I slid the fabric down over his torso. It settled on his shoulders. Then the zipper. I stepped behind him. I gathered the hair at the nape of his neck and lifted it. I grabbed the cold metal tab of the zipper. The sound was loud in the quiet room. As the dress closed around him, hugging his ribs, I felt him suck in a breath and hold it. The fabric was snug. It forced him to stand straighter. You can't slouch in a fitted bodice. Breathe. Mike, I whispered near his ear. He let the air out, but he didn't collapse. He stood tall. Shoes, I said, pointing to a pair of black ballet flats. Heels were a death sentence for a rookie. He slipped them on. He stood there in the middle of my room. The sunlight hit the side of his face. He wasn't Michael, not right now. Michael was awkward. Michael apologized for taking up space. The person standing in front of me was someone else. Okay, I said, my voice barely steady. Are you ready to see? He nodded. His hands were shaking by his sides, clutching the fabric of the skirt. I took his shoulders and turned him toward the full-length vintage mirror in the corner. Time stopped, literally. It felt like the clock on the wall missed a tick. Michael stared at the reflection. He didn't smile, he didn't laugh, he didn't make a joke about how ugly he looked. He just stared. He reached up, his hand hovering over the glass, tracing the outline of his own cheek, then moving down to the waist of the dress. I watched his face in the mirror. I saw the confusion melt away, replaced by a terrifying clarity, his eyes filled with tears. Not sad tears, but the kind of tears you get when you see the ocean for the first time, overwhelmed. I don't recognize him, Michael whispered. You're not supposed to, I said softly. He turned his head side to side, watching the way the soft brown wig I'd lent him moved. It brushed against his jaw. He choked on the word. You look beautiful. I finished for him, and it was the truth. He looked stunning. He looked at me through the mirror. Emily, he said, I can't go out there as Michael. Michael looks like a joke in a dress. I understood. A name is a container. If he walked out there as Michael, it was a prank. It was a costume. Okay, I said, who are you then? He looked back at himself. He smoothed the skirt down over his thighs. He took a deep breath, and for the first time in his life, his chest rose and fell with a natural, fluid grace. Maddie, he whispered. The name hung in the air. It didn't sound like he just made it up. It sounded like he had been carrying it around in his pocket for years, waiting for a chance to use it. Maddie, I repeated, testing the weight of it. Okay, Maddie. She smiled, a real smile. It reached her eyes. Do you think they'll laugh? Maddie asked, the fear creeping back in. Rachel and Olivia. I scoffed. Please, they're going to be jealous. I grabbed my purse. Come on, Maddie. Let's go show them what you've been hiding. Maddie took a step toward the door. She wobbled slightly in the flats, unaccustomed to the lack of grip. But she caught herself. She didn't walk with that heavy, stomping gait Michael had. She walked carefully, deliberately. She reached for the doorknob. Wait, she said. She turned back to the mirror for one last look. She adjusted the strap of the dress. A tiny, instinctive movement that looked so natural it scared me. I'm ready, she said. And as she opened the door, stepping out of the sanctuary and back into the hallway, I knew the bet was already lost. Or won, depending on how you looked at it. Because I knew, with a sinking certainty in my gut, that Michael wasn't coming back. Not really. We walked down the hall, the floorboards creaking under our feet, moving toward the laughter in the living room. The hallway felt miles long. It was just 10 feet of cheap laminate flooring. But for Maddie, it was a gauntlet. I walked ahead, trying to act casual, but my nerves were fraying. Behind me, I heard the clip-clop of the ballet flats. It was a lighter sound than Michael's usual heavy-footed stomp. It sounded tentative. We reached the archway of the living room. Rachel was still on the couch, exhaling a plume of vanilla vapor toward the ceiling. Olivia was scrolling on her phone. "Hey," I said. My voice sounded too high. "We're back." Rachel lazily rolled her head toward us. "Took you long enough. Did he chicken out?" She stopped mid-sentence. The vape pen froze in her hand. Olivia looked up. Her mouth opened. Just a little, then snapped shut. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. The kind where you can hear the refrigerator humming in the other room. Maddie stood in the doorway. She was clutching her left elbow with her right hand. A defensive hug. She was looking at the floor, her cheeks burning a furious shade of red that fought against the foundation I'd applied. "Holy shit," Rachel whispered. Maddie flinched. She looked like she wanted to bolt back to the safety of the bedroom. But then Rachel sat up, swinging her legs off the couch. She took her sunglasses off completely and leaned forward, squinting. "Turn around," Rachel commanded. Not mean, just curious. Maddie hesitated. She looked at me. I gave a tiny nod. Maddie turned. The navy skirt flared slightly as she moved. She did a slow, awkward spin. "I hate you," Rachel groaned, falling back against the cushions. "I actually hate you. You have a waist. How do you have a waist? You eat pizza like a garbage disposal." The tension in the room snapped like a rubber band. Maddie let out a breath she must have been holding since the bedroom. A nervous giggle bubbled up from her throat, a sound I hadn't heard from my brother in years. "It's the dress," Maddie said, her voice soft. "It cinches." "Come here," Olivia said, patting the spot next to her on the rug. "Sit down. Let me see the makeup." This was the first physical test. Sitting. Maddie walked over. She moved to drop onto the floor like a guy legs apart. Careless gravity. I hissed. "Knees." Maddie corrected mid-motion. She pressed her knees together, swept the skirt under her thighs, and lowered herself gracefully. It was clumsy, but she did it. "God," Maddie breathed out, adjusting the hem so it covered her knees. "You have to think about everything. How do you guys do this every day?" "We suffer," Rachel deadpanned. She reached out and touched the fabric of Maddie's sleeve. "So what do we call you, Michelle?" Maddie looked down at her hands. Her fingernails were bare, short and square, resting against the floral fabric. "Maddie," she said. Rachel paused. She looked at me, then back at Maddie. She didn't laugh. "Okay," Rachel said, lifting her beer can in a toast. "To Maddie, who is currently the hottest girl in this room, which is really pissing me off." We all laughed. We cracked fresh drinks. For an hour. The world outside didn't exist. It was just four girls hanging out. Maddie wasn't performing. She was listening to Olivia complain about her ex, nodding, tucking a strand of the wig behind her ear. Her posture had changed. She wasn't taking up space. She was part of the circle. Then the sound happened. A low mechanical vibration that shook the floorboards. The garage door. The laughter died instantly. We all froze, like deer hearing a twig snap. "Is that your dad?" Olivia whispered, her eyes wide. I looked at the clock on the microwave, 4:15 p.m. Dad never came home before 6. Mom usually worked until 5 at the library. "It's Mom," I whispered. "She's early." Panic, pure cold adrenaline. "Go!" I hissed at Maddie. "Run! Back door! Go change!" Maddie scrambled to get up, but the dress was tight. The shoes were slippery on the rug, and the panic made her clumsy. She stumbled. Clack! The door from the garage to the kitchen opened. "Hello," Mum's voice. Cheerful. Tired. "It is a sauna out there. I hope you girls didn't drink all the iced tea." It was too late. If Maddie ran now, she'd be a blur of blue dress sprinting through the hallway. It would look worse. Maddie froze. She stood by the armchair, trapped between the kitchen and the hallway. She went rigid, her hands balled into fists at her sides. Laura Carter walked into the living room. She was holding a reusable grocery bag in one arm and her purse in the other. She looked exhausted, hair frizzy from the humidity, glasses sliding down her nose. "Emily, did you remember to—" She stopped. She dropped the grocery bag. Thump! A carton of milk surely bruised, a bag of apples settling. Mum stood there. She looked at Rachel. She looked at Olivia. And then, her gaze landed on the stranger in the navy blue dress, standing in her living room. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I stepped forward, instinctively blocking her view. "Mom!" I started, talking fast. "We were just messing around. It was a dare, a stupid game. We're going to fix it right now." Mom didn't hear me. She took a step to the side, looking around me. She looked at Maddie. Maddie couldn't make eye contact. She was staring at her shoes, trembling. I could see the fabric of the dress vibrating because her legs were shaking so hard. She looked like she was waiting to be hit. "Michael?" Mom asked. Her voice wasn't angry. It was confused, breathless. Maddie slowly lifted her head. The wig framed her face. The mascara made her blue eyes look enormous, terrified, and pleading. "It's Maddie?" Maddie whispered. Her voice broke on the name. The silence stretched so thin, I thought it would snap and take our heads off. I waited for the lecture. I waited for the "what will the neighbors think?" I waited for the shame. Mum walked forward, slowly. She stopped 2 feet away from Maddie. She reached out a hand. Her fingers were trembling slightly. She didn't touch the dress. She reached up and cupped Maddie's cheek. Maddie leaned into the touch, her eyes closing, a single tear cutting a track through the foundation. "You look—" Mum started. She searched for the word. She tilted her head, studying the face of her child. Not the son she thought she had, but the person standing right there. She saw the lack of tension in the jaw. She saw the way the shoulders weren't hunched in defense anymore. "You look happy," Mom whispered. Maddie let out a sob. It wasn't a cry. It was a release, a dam breaking. "I am," Maddie choked out. "Mom, I really am." Mom ran her thumb over Maddie's cheekbone, wiping away the tear before it could ruin the makeup. "Okay," Mom said. Her voice was steady now, strong. "Okay." She turned to me. "The lipstick is a little too orange for her skin tone. Emily, she's a winter. Like me. She needs a berry shade." I stared at her, jaw on the floor. "What?" "If she's going to do this," Mum said, picking up her grocery bag with a sudden burst of practical energy, "she's going to do it right. Now, help me put these groceries away before your father gets home." "Your father?" The words hung in the air like smoke. The warmth in the room dropped 10 degrees. Mum stopped at the kitchen counter. She looked back at Maddie, who was still standing there, stunned, clutching her own arms. "He won't be home until 7, Mum said, her back to us as she unpacked the milk. "You have 3 hours. Maddie, be yourself. But when that garage door opens again, you know the rules." Maddie nodded. "I know." "Good." Mom turned around and offered a small, sad smile. "You look beautiful, honey. Now, who wants pizza?" I looked at Maddie. She wasn't trembling anymore. She was standing tall, breathing in the air of the living room like it was the first time she had ever really tasted it. Acceptance is a drug, and Maddie just got her first hit. But the clock on the microwave read 4:25. Tick, tick, tick. The countdown had begun. For the next 2 hours, the house existed in a bubble. It was a fragile, shimmering soap bubble floating above the sharp edges of reality. We ordered pizza, pepperoni and jalapeno. Watching Maddie eat was a study in relearning human mechanics. Usually, Michael inhaled food. He ate like he was afraid someone was going to steal his plate. But Maddie was careful. She sat at the kitchen island, legs crossed at the ankles. breaking the crust into small pieces. "You're going to ruin your lipstick," I warned, handing her a napkin. "I know," she said, dabbing the corner of her mouth. "It's stressful. Is it smeared?" "You're good," Rachel said, scrolling through her phone. "So, the party starts at 9. Are we going? Because if we walk in with her," she pointed a slice of pizza at Maddie, "we are going to be legends." Maddie looked down at her hands. She twisted the ring I'd lent her, a cheap silver band with a fake turquoise stone. "I don't think I can leave the house," Maddie said quietly. "Not like this. Not yet." "Why?" Olivia asked. "You look great." "Because out there." Maddie gestured toward the window, where the suburban twilight was turning the sky a bruised purple. "Out there. It's a joke. In here. It feels real." She looked at me. Her eyes were pleading. "I don't want to take it off. Not yet." I looked at the clock on the stove. 6:48 p.m. The bubble was about to burst. "Dad's going to be here any minute," I said, my stomach tightened. A familiar knot of anxiety that every kid with a strict father knows. "We need to get you upstairs. We need to scrub the makeup off. Now." Maddie didn't move. She stared at her reflection in the darkened window above the sink. She was looking at the silhouette of the girl she had just met. "5 more minutes," she whispered. "Just let me exist for 5 more minutes, sir." Mum was at the sink, rinsing dishes. Her back was stiff. She was scrubbing a plate so hard, I thought the ceramic would snap. She knew what was coming. Then we heard it. The sound that changed the atmospheric pressure of the house. Tires crunching on gravel, the heavy thud-thud of a car door closing. "He's here," Mum said. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the warm pizza smell. "Michael, upstairs, now!" But Maddie didn't move fast enough. Maybe it was the heels. Maybe it was defiance. Or maybe she was just paralyzed by the terror of returning to the person she used to be. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. "Scrap!" She took one step toward the hallway. The front door handle turned. The deadbolt clicked. Clack. It was too late. If she ran now, she'd be caught on the stairs, a fleeing criminal. "Stay," I whispered, grabbing her wrist. My hand was cold. Hers was burning hot. "Don't run. If you run, you look guilty." The door opened. David Carter walked in. My father was a big man, not fat, just solid. He occupied space with an authority that made the air feel thinner for everyone else. He was wearing his work suit grey, slightly rumpled from the commute and carrying his leather briefcase. He stepped onto the entryway mat. He looked at the shoes piled by the door. "Laura!" he called out, his voice booming. "I'm home. Traffic was a nightmare on I-5. He walked into the kitchen, loosening his tie. "Smells like pizza. Did you guys save me a—" He stopped. He was 3 feet away from the kitchen island. The scene froze. It was like a photograph that someone had set on fire. Mum at the sink, hands dripping wet, freezing mid-motion. Rachel and Olivia on the bar stools, eyes wide, paralyzed. Me, standing protectively next to her. And Maddie. Maddie stood by the refrigerator. She was taller than me in the flats. The navy dress hugged her waist. The wig was slightly messy from the humidity. Her hands were clasped in front of her, white-knuckled. Dad looked at me. Then he looked at Rachel. He gave a polite, confused nod. Then his eyes slid to the fourth girl. He frowned. He squinted. Just for a second. Like he was trying to place the face of this stranger. A cousin. A friend from college. Then I saw the moment of recognition hit him. It wasn't a spark. It was a sledgehammer. His eyes widened. His jaw went slack. The briefcase slipped from his fingers. Wham! It hit the floor, heavy and loud. Michael. The name came out like a question, but it sounded like a curse. Maddie didn't speak. She couldn't. Her chest was heaving, the fabric of the dress stretching tight with every shallow breath. "David," Mom stepped in, wiping her hands on a towel, moving between them. David, listen, the girls were just having some fun. It was a prank, a dare. Dad didn't look at Mom. He couldn't take his eyes off Maddie. His face changed. The confusion melted away, replaced by something much colder, something ancient and ugly. It wasn't just anger, it was revulsion. What? Dad's voice was a low growl. What is on your face? Maddie touched her cheek involuntarily. It's just makeup. Dad. Her voice was higher, softer. It wasn't Michael's voice. That seemed to trigger him more than the dress. Take it off, Dad said. He stepped forward. The air in the kitchen turned electric. Take that shit off, right now. David, stop, Mom said, grabbing his arm. He shook her off, not violently, but dismissively. He was focused entirely on his son. You look like a clown. Dad spat. The words were venomous. You look like a freak. Is this what you do at school? Is this what I'm paying tuition for? Maddie flinched with every sentence, like she was being slapped, but she didn't step back. That was the surprise. She didn't retreat. Michael would have retreated. Michael would have mumbled an apology and run to his room to scrub his face raw. But Maddie stood there. She was shaking. Yes? Tears were welling up in her eyes, threatening to ruin the mascara again, but her feet were planted. I don't want to take it off, Maddie said. It was a whisper. But in the silent kitchen, it sounded like a gunshot. Dad's face turned a deep, terrifying shade of red. What did you say to me? I said, Maddie lifted her chin. It was trembling, but it was up. I said I don't want to take it off. I like it. Dad laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. You like it? He gestured at her at the dress, the tights, the wig. You're a man, Michael. You are a man. Act like one. He reached out, his hand grasping for the shoulder of the dress. Maybe to shake him. Maybe to rip it. I stepped in. Don't touch her, I yelled. The word hung there. Her. Dad froze. He looked at me, betrayal written all over his face. Then he looked back at Maddie. He lowered his hand. He looked at his son, this creature he didn't understand, with a look of absolute, crushing disappointment. You make me sick, he whispered. He turned around. He didn't look at Mom. He didn't look at me. He walked out of the kitchen, past the dropped briefcase, and we heard his heavy footsteps going up the stairs. Thump, thump, thump. Then, the slam of the bedroom door, a sound that shook the pictures on the walls. In the kitchen, the silence rushed back in, filling the vacuum. Maddie let out a sound, a high, keening whimper, and covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook violently. Rachel and Olivia were staring at the floor, uncomfortable, witnessing a family fracture in real time. I wrapped my arms around Maddie. I felt the rigid structure of the bodice, the softness of the fake hair, the trembling of the body underneath. It's okay, I whispered into the wig. He's gone. It's okay. Maddie pulled her hands away from her face. Her makeup was ruined now, streaks of black running down her cheeks, but her eyes were fierce, terrified, but fierce. He didn't see me. Maddie choked out. He looked right at me, and he didn't see me. I see you, Mom said from the sink. Her voice was cracked. I see you, honey. Maddie looked at the ceiling, listening to the silence upstairs. I can't go back, she whispered. I can't put the cargo shorts back on. I can't be him anymore. It hurts too much. She looked at me, and I saw the resolve hardening behind the tears. The dare was over. The war had just begun. Help me fix my makeup, she said. I'm not scrubbing it off. 3 days. That's how long the house held its breath. For 3 days. We lived in a cold war. Dad went to work early and came home late. Retreating straight to the den with a bottle of scotch, Mum moved through the hallways like a ghost, aggressively cleaning things that were already clean. Scrub. 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 The smell of lemon pledge became suffocating. And Maddie? Maddie didn't go back to the cargo shorts. She didn't go back to the oversized grey t-shirts. She raided my closet again, not for a costume this time, but for armor. She wore my high-waisted skinny jeans, which were tight enough to cut off circulation, but showed the curve of her hips, and a soft, oversized cashmere sweater that hung off one shoulder. But the real declaration of war was on her hands. She hadn't taken the nail polish off. It was chipped now. The edges of the baby pink lacquer were jagged from nervous picking. But she refused to reach for the acetone. Every time she picked up a glass of water or tapped on her phone, those pink flashes were little middle fingers to the silence in the house. It all came to a head on Thursday night. The mandatory family dinner. We sat at the mahogany dining table. The air was so thick, you could have carved it with a steak knife. Clink. Scrape. Chew. The only sounds were the silverware hitting the china. Mum had made pot roast heavy, comfort food that sat like a stone in my stomach. I watched Dad. He was sawing at his meat with unnecessary force. His knuckles were white. He hadn't looked at Maddie once since we sat down. He was pretending there were only 3 people at the table. Maddie was sitting opposite him. She was picking at her potatoes. Her hair, her real hair, was pushed back with one of my headbands. It wasn't a wig anymore. It was just her face, vulnerable and exposed. "Pass the salt," Dad said. His voice was gravel. Maddie reached out. Her hand entered his field of vision. The pink nails caught the light of the chandelier. Dad stopped chewing. He stared at the hand holding the salt shaker. He didn't take it. "Look at you," he said, quietly. Maddie froze. She didn't pull her hand back. "David, please," Mum whispered from the end of the table. "Not while we're eating." "I'm trying to eat," Dad snapped, slamming his fork down. Clatter. "But I can't eat when I have to look at this." He gestured at Maddie with his knife, a sharp, accusing motion. "You're walking around this house like a spectacle. The neighbors are asking questions. Michael, Bob from next door, asked me why my son was wearing a girl's headband while getting the mail." Maddie slowly lowered the salt shaker to the table. She placed her hands in her lap, hiding the nails, but she didn't look down. She looked right at him. "I like the headband," she said. Her voice was trembling, barely audible. "You like looking like a freak?" Dad asked. He leaned over the table, his face flushing red. "Is that it? You want attention. You want everyone to look at you." "I want you to see me," Maddie said. The volume rose just a notch. "I see you," Dad yelled. "I see a confused young man who is throwing his future away for some sick fetish." "It's not a fetish." I jumped. It was the first time I'd ever heard Maddie yell at Dad. Maddie stood up. Her chair screeched backward against the hardwood floor. Screech. She was shaking. Her whole body was vibrating with the force of the adrenaline pumping through her. She gripped the edge of the table. "It's not a fetish," she repeated. Her voice was raw, cracking under the strain. "And I'm not confused. I was confused for 22 years. Dad, I was confused every time I looked in the mirror and didn't know who was looking back. But I'm not confused anymore." Dad stood up too. He towered over the table. "Sit down, Michael." "No." I said sit down. "And my name isn't Michael." The scream ripped through the dining room. It echoed off the walls, bouncing around the china cabinet. Silence. The kind of silence that follows an explosion. Maddie was breathing hard, her chest heaving under the cashmere sweater. Tears were streaming down her face, hot and fast, but she didn't wipe them away. "My name," she said, dropping her voice to a fierce, shaky whisper, "is Maddie, and I am your daughter." There it was, the line in the sand. I looked at Mom. She had her hand over her mouth, tears swimming in her eyes. She wasn't stopping it. She was witnessing it. Dad looked at Maddie. He looked at the tears, the headband, the defiant posture. He opened his mouth to speak, to shout, to crush this rebellion like he always did, but nothing came out. He looked at me, then at Mom. He realized, in that split second, that he was outnumbered. The dynamic had shifted. The gravity of the house had moved from him to her. Daughter. He spat the word out like it tasted like poison. Yes, Maddie said, whether you like it or not. Dad stared at her for 5 long seconds. Then, the fire in his eyes went out. It was replaced by a cold, dead look of resignation. I don't have a daughter named Maddie, he said flatly. He threw his napkin onto his plate. It landed in the gravy. A white flag surrendered into the mess. I'm going to a hotel, he said to Mum. He didn't wait for an answer. He turned and walked out of the dining room. We heard his heavy footsteps in the hallway. Then the jingle of keys. Jingle, jingle. Then the front door opened. David, Mum cried out, half rising from her chair. But the door slammed shut. Balam. The sound vibrated through the floorboards, up through the legs of the table, and into my bones. Then, the sound of the engine starting, the car backing out, the tires fading down the street. Then silence. We sat there for a long time. The pot roast was cold. The gravy had formed a skin. Maddie was still standing, gripping the table. She looked like she was about to collapse. He's gone, I whispered. Maddie let go of the table. Her knees buckled. I was out of my chair in a second, catching her before she hit the floor. Mum was there too. We huddled together on the dining room rug, a tangle of limbs and tears. Maddie was sobbing now, ugly, racking sobs that shook her whole frame. I killed it, she gasped, burying her face in my shoulder. I killed the family. I drove him away. No, Mum said. Her voice was fierce. She grabbed Maddie's face, forcing her to look up. Mum's eyes were dry now. There was a steeliness in them I had never seen before. She brushed the hair out of Maddie's tear-stained face. You didn't drive him away. Maddie, he chose to leave. Mum looked at the empty chair at the head of the table. He couldn't expand his heart enough to fit you in it, Mum said softly. That is his failure, not yours. Maddie sniffled, wiping her nose on her sleeve. But what do we do now? Mum looked around the room. The house felt huge, empty, but also lighter. The crushing weight of Dad's judgment was gone. The air was breathable again. Now, Mum said. She reached out and took Maddie's hand, the one with the chipped pink polish. She squeezed it. Now, we finish dinner. And tomorrow we go shopping. You can't wear Emily's jeans forever. They're too short for you. Maddie let out a wet, hiccuping laugh. Okay, she whispered, okay. I looked at my sister. Her eyes were red, her nose was running, and she looked like a wreck. But as she sat there on the floor, leaning against Mom, I saw it. Michael was gone. He had walked out the door with Dad. Maddie was here to stay. The house was quiet, but it wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of the last few days. It was a clean silence, like the air after a thunderstorm. Dad hadn't called. His recliner in the living room sat empty, the leather retaining the ghost of his shape, but the energy around it had dissipated. It was Tuesday, the day of the launch. We were in the hallway. The mission was simple. Go to the roasted bean, get 3 lattes, and come back, a 20-minute expedition. But for Maddie, it was a moon landing. Stop fidgeting, I said, slapping Maddie's hand away from her hemline. We were standing in front of the hallway mirror. Maddie wasn't wearing my clothes anymore. We had spent the weekend online shopping, Mum's credit card taking a heavy hit in the name of therapy. Maddie was wearing her own choices, high-waisted light-wash jeans that hugged her hips, and a soft sage green blouse with a V-neck. It wasn't a costume, it wasn't a drag look, it was just an outfit. But she was terrified. "I look like a linebacker," she muttered, turning sideways. "Look at my shoulders. I look like a linebacker in a blouse." I spun her around. I grabbed those shoulders. "You look like a swimmer," I corrected. "Shoulders are in. Have you seen the runways? You have structure. Own it." Maddie took a deep breath. Her chest rose and fell. She touched her throat. "It's the voice," she whispered, as soon as I opened my mouth. The spell breaks. I sound like a foghorn. We had practiced this for hours. "Pitch isn't everything," I reminded her. "It's the resonance. Move it from your chest to your face. Soften the edges." She nodded. She cleared her throat. "I would like a vanilla oat milk latte." She practiced. It was breathy. A little shaky. But it wasn't the deep rumble of Michael. It was lighter. Mum walked into the hallway. She was holding the car keys. She looked tired. The dark circles under her eyes were bruising, but she was smiling. "Ready?" Mum asked. Maddie looked at the door. The wood was solid oak. It was the barrier between the sanctuary and the war zone. "What if we see him?" Maddie asked. She didn't have to say who. "Then we see him," Mum said simply. "And he sees you. And the world keeps turning." Maddie nodded. She reached out and grabbed her purse, a small, tan crossbody bag. It was the final piece of armor. "Okay," Maddie said, "let's get coffee." Stepping outside was a physical shock. The Oregon summer sun was bright, bleaching the colors of the driveway. Maddie stopped on the porch. She squinted. A neighbor, Mr. Henderson, was mowing his lawn across the street. The roar of the lawnmower was loud. He looked up. He saw us. I felt Maddie tense up. Her instinct was to hunch, to hide, to become invisible. "Chin up," I hissed under my breath. "Walk like you own the sidewalk." Maddie forced her spine straight. She adjusted her sunglasses. She walked down the steps. Click. Click. She was wearing sandals now. Her toes were painted a soft lavender. Mr. Henderson stared. He wiped his forehead with a rag. He looked confused, but then he just waved. A generic, neighborly wave. Maddie froze. Then, tentatively, she raised her hand and waved back. Mr. Henderson went back to mowing. We got into the car. The door slammed shut. Thunk! Maddie let out a jagged laugh. He didn't know. He had no idea who I was. Or he didn't care. Mum said, starting the engine. "People are mostly worried about their own grass." "Honey." The roasted bean was crowded. The smell of burnt coffee and cinnamon hit us as soon as we opened the glass door. Indie rock music was playing a little too loud. This was it. The public arena. I walked in first, blocking for her. Mum brought up the rear. Maddie was the VIP in the middle. We got in line. Maddie was vibrating. I could feel the heat radiating off her arm. "Just breathe." I whispered, "You're just a girl getting coffee. Boring, mundane, invisible." A guy in a college hoodie bumped into Maddie as he squeezed past the line. "Oh, excuse me, miss," he mumbled, not even looking up from his phone. "Miss." The word hung in the air. Maddie's eyes widened behind her sunglasses. She looked at me. Her mouth dropped open slightly. He didn't stumble. He didn't mock. He saw long hair, a blouse, and a purse, and his brain said, "Miss." We reached the counter. The barista was a girl with green hair and a nose ring. She looked bored. She tapped the screen of the register. "What can I get for you?" she droned. This was the voice test. Maddie stepped forward. She gripped the strap of her purse. She swallowed. Maddie started. She pitched her voice up, focusing on the resonance. "Can I get a large vanilla latte with oat milk and 2 iced teas?" The barista didn't flinch. She didn't look confused. She just tapped the buttons. Tap. 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 Name, the barista asked, grabbing a paper cup and a Sharpie. This was the moment. The final seal. Michael was the name on the credit card in her pocket. Michael was the name on the driver's license. Maddie hesitated. The silence stretched for a second. Maddie, she said, clear, firm. Squeak, squeak. The Sharpie moved across the cup. The barista wrote it down in bold black letters. Maddie. That'll be $18.50. The barista said. Maddie paid. She fumbled a little with the card, her lavender nails clicking against the reader, but she did it. We moved to the pickup counter. Maddie stood there, watching the espresso machine hiss and steam. She wasn't hiding in her phone. She was looking around the shop. She was part of the scene. She wasn't an observer anymore. She was a participant. Order for Maddie, the barista called out. Maddie walked up. She took the cup. The heat of the cardboard warmed her hands. She looked at the name written in black marker. She traced the M. She turned to me. She pulled her sunglasses down to the bridge of her nose. Her eyes were wet, but she was grinning. A massive, goofy, beautiful grin that transformed her entire face. She spelled it right. Maddie whispered. Yeah, I smiled, bumping her shoulder with mine. It's a pretty common name. We didn't drive straight home. We walked to the park bench near the parking lot. We sat there, Mom, Maddie, and me sipping our drinks. The wind picked up, blowing Maddie's hair across her face. She reached up and tucked it behind her ear. It was such a small gesture, a feminine gesture, but it was automatic now, muscle memory. Do you think he'll come back? Maddie asked, looking at the foam in her cup. Mom sighed. She looked at the horizon. I don't know, Mum said honestly. He has a lot to unlearn, Maddie, and at his age, unlearning is harder than learning. Mum reached over and placed her hand on Maddie's knee. But that's his journey. Mum said, not yours. You don't have to wait for him to catch up. You keep walking. Maddie nodded. She took a sip of her latte. I'm terrified, Maddie admitted. Classes start in 3 weeks. I have to go back to campus. I have to come out to everyone. It's going to be a mess. Yeah, I said, it's going to be a total shit show. Maddie laughed. Thanks for the optimism. I'm serious, I said. People are going to stare. People are going to be jerks. You're going to lose friends. I turned to her. I looked her dead in the eye. But you're not going to be pretending anymore. Think about how much energy you spent trying to be Michael. Trying to walk like him, talk like him, think like him. It was exhausting. Right. It was suffocating, she corrected. So now, I said, you can use that energy for other things, like studying, or finding a boyfriend, or teaching me how to do that eyeliner wing because yours is actually better than mine today. Maddie smiled. It was a peaceful smile. She stood up. She smoothed down her jeans. She looked at her reflection in the shop window one last time. She didn't see a stranger. She didn't see a monster. She just saw a girl with a coffee cup, ready to go home. Let's go, Maddie said. My feet are killing me in these sandals. Welcome to womanhood, I said, linking my arm through hers. It hurts. It's expensive, and nothing has pockets. I'll take it, Maddie said. We walked back to the car, the three of us, leaving the empty space of the fourth person behind. The sun was high and hot, but Maddie didn't shrink from it. She walked right into the light, her heels clicking a steady rhythm on the pavement. Click, click, click. Forward. The next Saturday wasn't peaceful. It sounded like tearing Velcro and snapping plastic. We were in Michael's room. It didn't feel like Maddie's room yet. It still smelled like Old Spice and stale gym socks, a scent that used to be comforting but now felt like a haunting. We were performing an exorcism. Are you sure? I asked, holding up a flannel shirt. It was a nice one. Heavy wool. Red and black plaid. Dad had bought it for him last Christmas. Maddie was sitting on the floor, surrounded by heavy-duty black trash bags. She was wearing leggings and one of my oversized graphic tees. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she looked exhausted. Not sleepy exhausted, soul exhausted. She looked at the flannel. "Burn it," she said. "We can donate it to Goodwill," I suggested. "No," she said, snatching the shirt from my hand. "I don't want anyone to wear it. I want it gone. That shirt. It felt like wearing a lead vest. Every time I put it on, I felt like I was suffocating." She shoved it into the black bag. Crinkle, crunch. The sound was satisfying. We worked for hours. The keep pile was tiny, mostly books. A laptop, some sentimental knickknacks. The go pile was massive. Cargo shorts. Trash. The grey suits for law internships. Trash. The boxers. Trash. As the room emptied, the echo changed. The acoustics became sharper. The room felt bigger, colder, but cleaner. Then, Maddie paused. She was holding a shoebox. I knew that box. It was tucked under the bed. It held the bro artifacts. Photos from high school football, a dried corsage from prom, ticket stubs from concerts with the guys. She opened the lid. She stared at a photo. It was Michael, aged 18, arms slung around his best friend, Ryan. They were holding red Solo cups, laughing, heads thrown back. Michael looked happy. Or at least, he looked like he was doing a really good impression of happy. "I miss him," Maddie whispered. My heart stopped. "You miss Michael?" "No," she said, shaking her head. She tapped the photo. "I miss Ryan. I miss having a best friend who doesn't need anything from me, other than to show up and drink beer." She dropped the photo back in the box. "He's going to hate me. Ryan is. He's a guy's guy. He drives a lifted Tacoma. He thinks pronouns are a punchline." "Then he's an idiot," I said protectively. "He's my friend," she corrected, "or he was." As if summoned by the universe's twisted sense of humor. A sound rumbled from the driveway. Vroom. A heavy engine idling, the bass of a rap song thumping through closed windows. Maddie went pale. She scrambled to the window and peeked through the blinds. She gasped. She dropped the shoebox. Clatter. "It's him," she hissed. "It's Ryan. Oh God. Oh God. Emily. He's here." I looked out. Sure enough, a black Toyota Tacoma was parked behind Mom's sedan. Ryan Miller was hopping out. He was wearing basketball shorts and a backwards snapback hat, holding a six-pack of IPA. He looked exactly like what he was a relic from the life Maddie was currently stuffing into trash bags. "Don't answer it," Maddie said, backing away from the window. She looked frantic. She looked down at her leggings, her painted nails, her chest. "I can't. I'm not ready for him." Ding dong! The doorbell echoed through the house. "I'll get rid of him," I said, standing up. "Stay here. Lock the door." "Wait," Maddie said. I stopped. Maddie was breathing hard. She looked at the trash bags filled with Michael's clothes. She looked at the mirror. "If I hide," she said, her voice trembling, "then I'm doing exactly what I did for 22 years. I'm hiding in the bedroom while the world waits for Michael." She clenched her fists. The lavender nails dug into her palms. "I have to go down," she said. "Maddie, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. If I can face Dad, I can face Ryan." She walked over to the vanity. She didn't put on more makeup. She didn't change into safer clothes. She just smoothed her hair. "Let's go," she said. Opening the front door felt like opening an airlock into outer space. Ryan was standing on the porch, scrolling on his phone. When the door opened, he looked up, a grin already forming on his face. "Yo, Mike, I know you're hiding." The sentence died in his throat. He saw me first. "Oh, Hey, Emily, is Mike here? His car is in there. Then, he saw the person standing behind me. Maddie stepped into the doorway. She stood tall, refusing to shrink. She crossed her arms over her chest. Ryan stared. He blinked once, twice. He looked at the face, the familiar jawline, the blue eyes he'd known since kindergarten. Then his eyes traveled down. The graphic tee knotted at the waist. The leggings, the painted toes in the sandals. Ryan's brain seemed to short-circuit. He actually took a half step back, nearly tripping over the welcome mat. "Whoa," Ryan said. A nervous, confused laugh bubbled out of him. Is this for a pledge week thing? I thought you graduated." Maddie didn't smile. "It's not a bit." "Ryan," she said. Her voice was the one we practiced, lighter, softer, but firm. Ryan flinched at the sound of the voice. It was Michael's vocal cords, but not Michael's cadence. "Okay." Ryan dragged the word out. He looked at the beer in his hand, like he didn't know why he was holding it. "So, what is this? Did you lose a bet?" "No," Maddie said. "I won one." She took a breath. "My name is Maddie. Ryan. I'm transitioning." The silence that followed was different from the silence with Dad. Dad's silence was heavy with anger. Ryan's silence was heavy with awkwardness. It was the visceral discomfort of a dude who suddenly realizes the locker room rules don't apply anymore. Ryan scratched the back of his neck. He looked at the street, desperate for an escape route. "Transitioning," Ryan repeated, like, to a girl. "Yes." Ryan looked back at her. He squinted, trying to find his friend in the woman standing there. "But," Ryan started, gesturing vaguely with the beer, "we went to the strip club for your 21st. You dated Sarah. You played linebacker." "I was acting," Maddie said. "I was a really good actor, Ryan, because I was terrified that if I stopped acting, you guys would beat the shit out of me." Ryan looked hurt. Genuine hurt flashed across his face. "Dude, I mean, Maddie," he stumbled over the name. "I wouldn't have. We're boys. I mean, we're friends." He looked down at his feet. The machismo deflated. He just looked like a confused kid. "So," Ryan said, looking up, eyes wide and vulnerable, Does this mean you don't like beer anymore because I bought the expensive stuff?" It was such a stupid question. It was so absurdly trivial. I felt a giggle rise in my throat. Maddie's shoulders dropped. The tension broke. A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "I still like beer, you idiot," Maddie said. "I just don't like pretending to like football." Ryan let out a long exhale. Okay, that's a start." He held out the six-pack. It was an offering, a peace treaty in cardboard packaging. "Can I come in?" Ryan asked. "Or is that weird?" "It feels kind of weird." "It's incredibly weird," Maddie admitted, "but come in anyway." We sat on the back porch. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. It wasn't a fairy tale. Ryan stared at Maddie a lot. He kept looking at her nails, then quickly looking away. He didn't know how to sit. Usually, they would manspread and take up space. Now, Ryan sat on the edge of his chair, polite and stiff. "So," Ryan said after his second beer. The alcohol was loosening the gears. "Do I call you she now, or is that for later?" "She is good," Maddie said. She was holding her beer differently now, not clutching it by the neck, but holding the base. "She." Ryan tested the word. He shook his head. "That's gonna be hard to reprogram." "Man, woman. Sorry." "It's okay," Maddie said softly. "I'm still reprogramming too." Ryan looked at her, really looked at her. "You know," he said, swirling the liquid in his bottle, "you seem less angry, You used to be kind of a dick sometimes. Like, snappy. You look chill. It's hard to be chill when you're wearing a costume that's too tight, Maddie said. Ryan nodded slowly. He didn't fully get it. He probably never would fully get it. He was a guy who thought feelings were something you pushed down until they turned into ulcers, but he was trying. Well, Ryan said, clinking his bottle against hers. Clink, to Maddie, who is apparently a girl now, which makes our bromance very confusing. But I guess I'll roll with it. Maddie laughed. It was a real laugh. I watched them from the kitchen window. Maddie hadn't lost everything. The trash bags upstairs were full of clothes, but the chair on the porch wasn't empty. She was building a new life, not by burning everything to the ground, but by sifting through the ashes to see what was strong enough to survive the fire. Ryan stayed for pizza. He left at 10. When Maddie came back inside, she looked exhausted again, but it was a good exhaustion. The kind you feel after a long hike. He didn't run. She whispered to me. No, I said he didn't. He's going to tell everyone. Though, Maddie said, locking the door. By tomorrow morning. Everyone from high school will know. Good. I said. Let them know. Saves you the trouble of sending a mass text. Maddie smiled. She started walking up the stairs. Emily. Yeah. Can we keep the flannel shirt, she asked. The red one, I fished it out of the bag when you weren't looking. Why, I asked. Because, she said, pausing on the landing. Girls wear flannel too. And it's cold in this house without Dad. She turned and walked into her room. The door clicked shut. Click. She was keeping the warmth. She was letting go of the rest.